Welcome to 619 Ethical Debate on the topic of ABA training in the home and TeleABA training. I'd like to introduce our team members. We have Amanda Cragen, who is from Indiana. She has worked in the ABA field for 2 years. Currently, she's an ABA therapist at a clinical setting with clients between the ages of 2 to 21. She'll be discussing TeleABA. Next, we have Johnny Brennan, who is located in Colorado. He's working as an ABA interventionist specialist for 1 year. Johnny works in a day service facility for adults with developmental disabilities. He will be discussing in-home ABA viewpoints. Our next member is Cynthia. She implements services in California. She is a registered behavior technician who works in infant toddler programming that specializes with children with autism and developmental disorders. And she will be presenting the conclusion of our debate. Lastly, I'm Amy Beer. I live in the state of Kansas. I've been in the ABA field for 7 years now, working for a non-for-profit company who focuses on home and school-based services as a registered behavior technician. I will be presenting the introduction of the debate. The field of ABA focused on two main concepts: early intervention and intensive intervention. Lovelock's research is the pioneer of those two concepts. He's developed a study to test the intensiveness of the intervention. His study included experimental group clients who received 40 hours a week of one-to-one therapy, and the control group, which received 10 hours of one-to-one therapy. The results of the study indicated that there was significant difference in post-treatment according to the intensive 40-hour week intervention. Due to Lovelock's success of the study, many parents and guardians consider the pursuit of intensive intervention. However, we run into an issue with supply and demand relating to this process. In the situation with demand, ABA services is higher than those who are able to properly implement services. In order to fulfill this demand, implementation of services need to be adhere. To do that, we must have the training to do so. In the field, we train parents, educators, and service providers. Traditional training has been presented as in-person educational opportunities with direct lecture, on-the-job training, and job skills training modules. However, with recent developments of telecommunications, we can branch out and have online modules for materials, online modeling, video conferencing. With this debate, we'll discuss the pros and cons of in-home ABA and TeleABA training and therapy. We begin our debate with Johnny, who will be presenting the first point regarding in-home ABA.
All right, thank you, Amy, for the introduction. My name is Johnny Brennan, and yes, I will be taking the role as advocate for the use of in-home therapy sessions and training. I believe these in-home sessions are more beneficial for the individuals we support as behavior analysts, as well as provide the optimum training necessary for parents, providers, and guardians. Throughout this debate, I will use research points and data to defend my position in hopes to convince the audience that in-home ABA therapy and training is the most effective form of therapy available. Before I dive into my first point of advocation, I would like to take this opportunity to define exactly what our group means when we use the phrase in-home therapy. Basically, this portion of our debate will be the who, the what, and the where. What do these sessions look like? Who's involved? And where do these intervention sessions and trainings take place? So first, what do these sessions look like? Sessions are typically 1 to 3 hours, consisting of short periods of structured time devoted to a specific task, which, depending on the client receiving these interventions, can range from skill acquisition, target behavior decreasing, or the increasing of appropriate or replacement behaviors. Usually within a session, there will be breaks from around 10 to 15 minutes before the intervention session begins again. In my personal experience, we also have allowed for an additional amount of time, usually about a 10-minute window, to allow for free time or rapport building before or after the session. This free time allows the behavior specialist to build a connection or a bond, basically build the trust of the clients they serve or the parents that are being trained in ABA intervention techniques. Next, I would like to move on to who is involved. Typically in a session, when a child is involved, obviously the child will be there. The one implementing the intervention will be present. And on occasion, and in specific terms to training opportunities, the parent or the guardian of the individual will be present as well. At times, the BCBA who developed the behavior plan will be present to guarantee the intervention is being implemented according to the way it was written, or a second observer will be on site for data collection support, depending on the target behavior being treated. Finally, I would like to quickly mention where these interventions take place. Depending on the comfort of the parties involved, the target behavior the intervention is intended for, and the goal of the behavior plan, these intervention sessions can take place either in the residence of the client, at a clinic or a site where the behavior professional works, or in a mutually agreed upon location in the community. Again, these environments are a case-by-case situation based on the needs of the individual receiving behavior services.
All right, thanks, Johnny. I'm Amanda Cragen, and I'll be presenting the side for TeleABA. When looking at the facts for TeleABA, I believe there are many benefits to participating in these types of therapy. During this debate, you'll experience research from several scholarly articles supporting my position on how TeleABA is an excellent way to provide ABA services. Prior to presenting why TeleABA is the best form of therapy in many situations, I will be defining several key aspects of TeleABA, just as Johnny did with in-home therapy. First, what do the TeleABA sessions look like? A TeleABA session would include a BCBA remotely video chatting with clients to assess behaviors and getting updates, usually weeklies, and at least in the studies that I have read, but it could take place on a more frequent basis if deemed necessary. It gives the parent accountability and support using online video chat. Typically, the sessions will be about 60 minutes in duration, but will be continued throughout the week when the parent or caregiver under the parent or caregiver's watch. The next important topic is who is involved in the therapy and sessions. The session involves obviously the BCBA, the parent or caregiver, whoever would be providing the therapy, and the client. During the week outside the telesessions, it would be required for a parent or caretaker, again, whoever is providing the therapy, to be responsible for continuing to practice and collecting the data. The obvious question when it comes to that is, how do you affordably train a parent to do ABA? Well, we'll talk about that a little bit later in the debate. Last, I want to explain where the sessions take place. These sessions can take place in the client's home or in a building similar to a building funded by the Iowa Communication Network that Lee mentions in one of his articles. The building or home is required to have access to the internet, and it's preferred to have an Ethernet connection for a stronger signal, and obviously a PC or a Mac with audio and video capabilities. Now, on to my first point. TeleABA is easy to access no matter how far you live from a clinic setting or the nearest ABA or BCBA. We have consumers who drive an hour and a half one way to receive ABA therapy at the clinic that I work at. For those living a significant distance from a clinic setting, that would make it difficult, and TeleABA would help them receive treatment. Many consumers are farther from clinics, making it difficult to afford travel time for either the BCBA to go into the home or for the consumer to travel to the clinic setting. I'm going to screen share here. As you can see from the slide that I'm showing, there are 3,898 BCBADs, BCBAs, and BCABAs in California, which is the largest state in our group, and that's where Cynthia's from. It seems like a lot compared to the other 3 states we looked at. Colorado, where Johnny's from, has 26 BCBADs and 342 BCBAs. Kansas, where Amy's from, has 24 BCBADs and only 88 BCBAs. That's only 1 to 2 BCBAs per 10,000 square miles. In Indiana, my home state, has only 15 BCBADs and 363 BCBAs. The majority of providers are located near larger cities, so those in more rural areas may not be able to easily access that clinic setting. Another point I would like to make on the ease of TeleABA is that there is internet almost everywhere. I'm going to screen share again here. I have a Verizon wireless internet coverage map of the United States. Notice how very large portion of the map is red, meaning that Verizon provides internet coverage to these areas. This is just one internet provider in the United States. There are thousands of more local providers and even large network providers that may cover more of the white areas. The white areas means that they have no or poor signal. TeleABA also makes it affordable, making it easier. In a study that Dr. Kelly Shields from the University of Iowa's Children's Hospital, she estimates the cost of in-person versus TeleABA. And again, I have another little screen share. These are costs listed in several key aspects of ABA. So parents' time per week, if the service is in person, is 1 hour versus telehealth would be a little bit more at 1.5 hours. The behavior consultant's time per week in person would be 8 hours versus telehealth, only 1 hour. The family assistance time per week isn't applicable in person, but is about 1.5 hours per week in telehealth. The cost per child per week for direct care staff in person is $291, and in telehealth is only $60. And for 6 months of weekly behavioral services in person is $6,984 versus telehealth would be about $1,440. Now, again, that is for Iowa. That was the information that we were given from Dr. Kelly Shields. There are also 44 states who have some form of reimbursement for telehealth from Medicaid, and 21 states who have some form of reimbursement for telehealth via private coverage insurance, according to her research.
Okay, so luckily, as Amanda stated, we do live in a day and age where access to the internet can assist us in our daily lives. The internet can provide us with connections to families who live far away, can give us information otherwise difficult to find, as well as, especially in this case, therapists and doctors can provide medical or behavioral support that may not be within a feasible travel distance. The problem I see with that is, although we have come a long way since the internet's debut in the 1980s or 1990s, internet is not a guarantee. I think we can all remember a time where we were in desperate need of the internet to either check an email, submit a school project, or other tasks, and the internet was down, or we're in a dead zone, or we had to walk over and do the whole unplug the router, wait 10 seconds, plug it back in, and hope that was the quick fix that we needed to get our internet back up. If we're providing behavior therapy and training to clients and families, there are many steps and parts that will be included in these sessions. There is the pre-interview, where we begin to learn about the needs of the individual as well as the goals of the families. There are the pre-intervention data collection times, where we will truly gauge the severity of the behavior and begin to develop effective treatments. There is the observation during the intervention sessions, where we must make sure that the plans are being implemented effectively and ethically. And this requires, at a minimum, a strong internet connection that allows for reliable data to be collected and observed. We are an evidence-based practice, and without the guarantee of a strong internet connection, how can we really rely on the evidence given to us within these sessions? Amanda makes a great point at the ease it is for families in rural areas to receive behavioral services with telehealth. Are we to assume that in these rural areas, they have the ability to 100% guarantee that their internet will not fail in the most important times during an intervention session? And the answer is no, we can't 100% guarantee that. So going into my first point, I would like to start out with what I believe to be one of the biggest strengths of in-home ABA therapy and training, and that is the humanistic connection that is obtained between behavior professionals and the clients or parents that they support. According to the article, Parenting Stress and Psychological Functioning Among Mothers of Preschool Children with Autism and Developmental Delay, published in July of 2009 by the National Institute of Health, It is well established that mothers of children with developmental and psychiatric difficulties are at a risk for experiencing greater distress than mothers of typically developing children. It is my belief that a role we take when providing service to these families and or individuals with behavior challenges or delays is to not only help develop skills, but also to alleviate some of this burden and stress. I think an important way to do this is to develop an understanding between professional and parent that the parents are a critical part of the team and their input is just as valuable as any other member. Paul Benson and his team from the University of Massachusetts, Boston, published an article titled, Maternal Involvement in the Education of Young Children with ASD. And in this article, they echo my previous statement. Dr. Benson writes, parental involvement is widely acknowledged to be a critical best practice in the education of young children with ASD. When we develop the connection between parent professional a mutual understanding and strong collaboration takes place. I feel that we lose some of that effect when we lose the face-to-face contact. Sure, we can use webcams and Skype and different apps to speak to one another, but in these sessions, parents may feel that they are being talked to rather than being an equal part of their conversation. If the therapy sessions are taped or previously recorded for the parents to watch at a later time, then they have no opportunity to ask questions as their learning takes place. They have to wait, contact the therapist either by email or phone or video message, again, wait for the therapist to get back to them, and hope that their questions can be answered thoroughly enough to not have to repeat this process. All the while, I feel like stress could possibly be building for them. They might be asking themselves, well, why am I not understanding this so easily? Why isn't this working right away? And I believe this could add to the stress they could already be weighted down by just by being the parent or the guardian or provider for an individual who needs extra support in their life. Again, if we can alleviate some of those stresses instead of adding more, shouldn't we do that?
Good points, Johnny, and I totally understand your confusion. In my opinion, and from my experience, the BCBA's humanistic connection to their parents or client in a clinic setting is not near as crucial as a therapist connection to the parents or the client. The therapist must be well paired with that client and even the parent or caretaker to provide great therapy. In TeleABA, the parent or caretaker is typically the one doing the practice with the consumers. They should be able to be paired well enough with the client to provide that humanistic connection that you are referring to. Yes, it would be difficult to have contact with the BCBA via email. However, when there are times that I don't understand something and what the best approach would be, I have to call a program coordinator or a BCBA into my therapy room. It's still not an immediate response, and we would need to revisit that at a later time to see if they are assisting someone else or if that other person is not available. This is why adequate training is necessary for the parent or person who is providing the therapy via telehealth. I've seen so many instances where children light up when they FaceTime, which is Apple's form of video chat, with their program coordinator, or even with family members who live far away, especially in military families. They're still able to build that rapport. It just becomes a different type of relationship. In an article by Seuss, it states, the use of telehealth can be an effective method to deliver behavioral treatments and warrants further investigation to determine the procedures that will produce optimal outcomes. I'm going to go ahead and move on to my second point. As Amy talked about earlier in the debate, there's a supply and demand with ABA therapy. There are long waiting lists to be accepted into clinics because of space in the clinic buildings themselves. There's not always enough space for every single person who would need ABA therapy. Now I understand we are talking about in-home therapy. However, that still requires that person to go away from that clinic setting or that home hub to provide that in-home therapy. When clinic settings are taken out of the option, that leaves in-home and telehealth. As mentioned before, it is often difficult for a BCBA to travel to a home for several reasons, a couple of which include money to travel to and from, and as well as the time it takes to sometimes travel to that home. If we look at cutting out that travel, a BCBA can supervise, service, and connect with many more clients and families via telehealth. Let's say a BCBA drives an hour and a half to a home session and an hour and a half away from the home session. The BCBA would spend approximately 1 hour in the home for the session, and we will assume that he or she takes about 30 minutes after each session to record data and provide a summary of each session. Looking at this from a telehealth perspective, the BCBA could have participated in 3 one-hour sessions, including a 30-minute debriefing following each session and the amount of time that it took him or her to visit one home. I found it interesting to look at this way because time is so crucial with the demand for therapy.
Yeah, Amanda, you make a few great points about time management and the amount of clients that can be supported when utilizing telehealth. And while I agree helping as many individuals with their behavioral needs is important, we must always remember to keep those individuals' needs first. I am a strong believer in quality over quantity. While I would love to say that I am able to quickly change hats every half hour to a new client with a completely new set of needs, with a new family dynamic, with new funding, and with different behaviors, I feel that if I tried to cram as many sessions in one day, I ethically would be doing a disservice to those families. I think we as behavior analysts and students understand, or are beginning to understand, that behavior is not something that can be a quick fix. You need to take the time to really understand and work with the clients you support in order to help them achieve their goals. I would gladly support 2 clients all day and give them my maximum effort and time to see that their plans are being implemented effectively and witness their success, than try to support 10 clients and not be giving it my all. In regards to time management, I hate to be pessimistic, but let's look at the worst case scenario for telehealth. So you're working with a family or a child with behavioral needs. They live in a rural part of the country, so internet at times can be spotty. You schedule your first session via webcam, Skype, what have you, and you block off an hour of your time for the session. The session begins, and within 2 minutes, the internet goes out. For the next 20 minutes or so, you scramble trying to connect with the parents until finally you give up. You email the parents that you'll just have to reschedule. The parents email you back a few days later, and you begin the process of finding a time that fits both of your schedules, which in itself can be time consuming. You find a new time, set up a session, and the same thing happens again. So now you start over at square one again. Now you've wasted valuable observation and training time just trying to get that first meeting underway. And don't forget, if you were just beginning with this client, you'll need to have multiple meetings before an intervention plan can be established. These intermittent internet problems could have been alleviated if you as a BCBA had gone to the home or sent one of your colleagues to the home of the client in the first place for an in-home therapy session. I think by utilizing in-home therapy as opposed to telehealth, in the long run, it actually saves more time if a situation like this were to occur. Okie dokie. So moving on to my next point, I would like to begin a conversation about the data collection methods and observation that goes along with providing effective and ethically sound ABA therapy. In the article, Data Collection and Measurement Assessment in Behavioral Research, published by the American Psychological Association, the author Douglas Kostowitz states, the measurement of behavior plays an integral role in psychology and its subfields, such as behavior analysis. Behavior analysts, as with all scientists, must establish clear and concise links between observed measures and the actual phenomena under observation. I believe using teletherapy and training as opposed to in-home observation calls into question this statement. I see many problems with the ability to obtain reliable data using teletherapy. Differences between cameras and technical equipment vary as much as the behaviors we study themselves. If the camera is not placed in the exact right spot so that the entire environment is observed, if the microphone is not of the highest quality that they can hear every pin drop during a session, or if the behavior involves elopement or the leaving of a space or environment, this can be a concern and an extreme barrier to reliable data collection. So let's give another example. I love examples. I, as a behavior analyst, am conducting an ABC data collection via a Skype therapy session. I've been able to analyze I have to be able to analyze the antecedents of behavior. I have to see, hear, and observe everything that's going on in that environment. So it is my belief that the only way to observe the environment reliably is to have the highest quality camera and microphone set up. Then I won't have to question my judgment. Questions won't come up like, was that a noise in the other room? Was there a car that just passed outside? Are people talking in the background, or is the TV just on? Furthermore, do we provide this expensive equipment for the parents or the providers of the individual receiving services? Do we charge the parents? And I don't mean to continue to bring up past points, but if we're attempting to alleviate some stress for parents, adding a couple $1,000s of financial burden might not go over well with some of these parents or providers. Money arguments could lead to a distrust between team members and hurt the overall team collaboration. I'm going to touch a little bit more about this in my next point, but also, how do we know parents are collecting reliable data? If we as therapists are relying on information the parents observe while they implement the strategies we teach them, they have to be trained fully on how to conduct this data collection. Again, do we provide this training before intervention free of charge? Do we charge for these sessions on top of the intervention sessions that we can have take place once we can guarantee that they understand the importance of data collection? An easily understood definition of the observer effect is a person's tendency to, possibly unconsciously, distort or influence situations or events and make them fit with their preconceived outcomes. If we're working with parents who have seen behaviors exhibited by their children a million times in the past and have seen the things that trigger this behavior, it's not too crazy to think the parent might say something along the lines of, well, technically the behavior didn't take place, but I knew it was going to because I just know my child and I know how he or she is going to react. If the behavior didn't take place, you cannot collect data that it did. If we as therapists are unable to collect this data ourselves, or at least as a third party, it makes coming up with effective intervention plans extremely difficult.
And those are great points, Johnny. Here's what I have to say about it. There are grants, as I mentioned before, which companies can apply for to fund the cameras. And as I mentioned earlier, 44 states have telehealth reimbursement for Medicaid, and 21 have telehealth reimbursements for private coverage insurance. This is a charge that I believe can have assistance programs for families. So it's not always going to come out of their pocket, and most likely we will be able to find a way to fund those cameras. A successful TeleABA practice will require parents and caregivers to be thoroughly trained to handle behaviors appropriately. They need to be able to collect ABC data and accurately observe the client. During the training period, it may require the BCBA and the parents spend more time face-to-face in effort to get the most proper training. There are several types of parental teaching out there, one of which is called OASIS. Amy's position in Kansas uses this training. So at this point, I'm going to kick it over to Amy so that she can talk about what OASIS is.
Thanks. OASIS, which is Online Applied Systems for Intervention Skills, which was developed with the University of Kansas Medical Center. We use OASIS in the current company that I'm at as a parent training that is both in person and TeleABA based on where they're located. This service is a 3 hours per week. 1 hour includes online modules, and then a 2 hour face-to-face or TeleABA observation of the client. During those interaction portions, OASIS provides review of online materials. They also conduct activities with the child and the parent, and it gives immediate feedback regarding those. Also, we provide best practice information, developing strategies for other implementations of behavior strategies. We also do, during the sessions, we do access services assessments based on where they are at, what services are available. With OASIS, though, our target client is 6 years and younger, and the parent must provide their online access.
All right, thanks, Amy. So here it is. This is, in my opinion, one of the most important supporting points for telehealth. TeleABA frees clinic and in-home space for those who truly need that one-on-one therapy. This will always There will always be exceptions to the rule. And TeleABA will not always be the answer for every consumer with autism. In some cases, such as clients with severe self-injurious behaviors and aggression, a hands-on approach may be required by trained and experienced professionals and in person. If those who are currently in a clinic or an in-home setting that are suitable for TeleABA participate, then this would free clinic and in-home space for consumers who are not appropriate for TeleABA. This approach would allow for many more consumers to be served appropriately.
And that is actually something that we agree on, Amanda. I think the use of telehealth or in-home therapy is a case-by-case situation and can be used, conjointly. All the individuals we support as behavior professionals are unique and have individualized needs and behaviors. I believe if we look into each new client we support as an individual without any preconceived notions about their behaviors and work with the parents or their guardians to find the best and most effective way to support their growth, then we're on the right track. We as behavior analysts follow a strong group of core ethical principles, one of which is the pursuit of excellence. In this principle, we are asked as professionals to constantly be researching and continuing to expand our knowledge of our field and to be searching for new techniques and research. I believe we'll be going against this principle if we are not open to new or different approaches to providing behavior services, such as telehealth. For my final point, and what I think is probably the most important part of my argument to consider when deciding between telehealth and in-home therapy or training sessions, we have to think about the ethical codes and consider those. We as behavior analysts go through extensive training and education in order to provide the ethical and effective support we are expected to do for the individuals that we serve. As of right now, according to the BACB regulations, on top of the schooling and education we must receive, we are asked to complete an additional 1,500 hours of field work, both supervised and unsupervised, before we are even allowed to sit for the exam that make us a board certified behavior analyst. We go through this training, this education, this field work, because we know at the root of this field is the individual, the human being that we will be supporting in the future. The parents or guardians or providers we'll be working with, for the most part, will not have this training. It is up to us as professionals to ensure that the safety and well-being of the clients we support is always at the forefront of any therapy we provide. By using teletherapy as well as recorded videos to train parents, I don't think we're providing them with the most ethically sound training available. I would like to investigate if there's any research about what constitutes as adequate training for those that do not have any ABA credentials. Is 1 hour training enough? 2, 3? What is the definitive line that we as professionals can say, okay, they, meaning the parent or the guardian, are ready to implement the therapy and intervention techniques we have been training them on? For the most part, I think this will have to be a case-by-case situation as well. If I was put into a situation where the only contact I had with the implementers of a behavior plan that I had written was Skype or recorded videos, I know ethically I would not feel comfortable with allowing them to implement a plan with my name on it until I could guarantee that they're doing it up to the standards that any of us as students of applied behavior analysis hold. According to Ethics for Behavior Analysts, the 3rd edition by John S. Bailey and Mary R. Birch, behavior analysts are part of a culture of caring individuals who seek to improve the lives of others. This is probably one of the most significant quotes we as behavior professionals must adhere to. And this is why the first ethical consideration is probably also the most important. Do no harm. Regarding this ethical consideration, Bailey and Birch write, although no behavior analyst would knowingly do harm, it can come in subtle forms that need to be attended to carefully. One obvious example is that of a behavior analyst who's practicing outside his or her area of expertise. The use of telehealth makes me question this statement. Do all BCBAs or other behavior analysts have the expertise to provide training for the implementation of other plans? I know from personal experience, a BCBA must go through an 8-hour training session to supervise and log supervision hours for another behavior professional. They have to go through this rigorous training, and they will be supporting someone who already has pretty adequate education in this field. How many more hours must they get to ethically say, I can train individuals who have absolutely no knowledge of the tenets of ABA therapy? And that leads me to question, is there a separate training for using telehealth technology? Obviously, it is a very different form of therapy. Does the BCBA need a separate training for this specific therapy option? If so, then do parents and guardians need to search out and find which of the BCBAs from their states has these specific credentials? If we're saying that individuals in rural areas or smaller states are going to be the ones utilizing this type of therapy, then BCBA options are already limited. And by choosing telehealth therapy, the amount of professionals that can ethically provide training and therapy dwindles down even further.
Yes, we must act ethically in this field. That is true. Is it more unethical to ignore the behaviors at home and not act on them and not provide that therapy? Well, that's a tough question. In the BACB Code of Ethics, section 4.07 states, if environmental conditions prevent implementation of a behavior change program, behavior analysts recommend that other professional assistance, assessment, consultation, therapeutic interventions by other professionals be sought. And if environmental conditions hinder implementation of the behavior change program, behavior analysts seek to eliminate the environmental constraints or identify in writing the obstacles in doing so. So as we spoke about before, TeleABA is not for every consumer. In certain situations, it is obvious that a BCBA or other ABA professional will be required to do that therapy. There's going to be constant supervision and training for parents, for that parent or caregiver providing the therapy. The overseeing BCBA should be working to be certain that the therapy provided is adequate and in line with the Code of Ethics.
Okay, thank you. Well, my name is Cynthia. Okay. And before concluding our debate, I'd like to restate the strengths of both approaches and the claims against each one. First, I'd like to restate the strengths of in-home ABA. One important point that Johnny made was humanistic connection that a therapist has with the client and parent. Having face-to-face meetings in in-home therapy gives the opportunity for BCBAs to show clients and families that they are there to help them in their lives rather than invading their lives. Moreover, in-home therapy also provides an opportunity to include other family members in the process of the treatment, in which this can increase the chances of generalization to occur across different people. This gives families a vital role in their child's treatment and makes them feel as part of the team. As Johnny stated, when we develop a connection with parents and the professional, a mutual understanding and strong collaboration takes place. In addition, this allows for the therapist or BCBA to get to know the client's interests, hobbies, and motivations, whatever that could be. That could be coloring, music, certain toys that they like. And this can be helpful when working with the client, as the BCBA gets to know potential resources that the client has and they can use in the future. This also increases trust This also increases trust that client and families have in the BCBA as they get to know the BCBA on a more personal level. The second point stated was observation and data collection and TeleABA versus in-home therapy. This is critical because this is very important to study the child's behaviors, characteristics, strengths, and weaknesses without being biased. Johnny made a great point about the possibility of observer bias and preconceptions to occur when a parent is the one who is implementing the treatment. It was stated that observer effect can occur in which a person's tendency to distort or influence situations or events can make them fit those ideas into preconceived outcomes, which, as he said, it could be unconsciously. Another point made was unreliable data or lack thereof, as parents may not know the importance of data collection. Observation allows a BCBA to collect data on behaviors that exist, the environmental factors that can trigger them, and the type of treatment that can be provided. So observation really aids in the process of identifying the social, communication, emotional skills of each client to aid that process. Treatment planning can become easier with the necessary information obtained through observation. Data collection and altogether can capture a whole picture of what is going on. Trained clinical staff will most likely provide reliable data collection and will not have observe a bias or preconceptions of any type. The final point of in-home therapy was stating the importance of ethical codes. It was mentioned that behavior analysts go through extensive training and education in order to provide high-quality services. Considering the extensive amount of training and supervision that behavior analysts receive, allowing parents to implement treatment via TeleABA will not provide the most ethically sound training available. One ethical code that relates to this idea is practicing within our boundary of competence. Parents are not practicing within their competence and can possibly unknowingly cause harm. We as behavior analysts do no harm and should ensure that all who implement any type of treatment to be properly trained. As professionals, we want to provide the best treatment that is the most beneficial to our clients. Therefore, parents implementing treatments with insufficient amount of training comes into question. Now that we have gone over some strengths, I'd like to focus on a claim against in-home ABA. One thing that was mentioned was the waiting list, which are caused by the increasing number of children diagnosed with autism, which has also increased the number of professionals. The shortages of competent professionals in the field have also had an effect on those waiting for services, prolonging the wait due to availability. As Amy and Amanda mentioned, the issue of supply and demand is the main reason for long wait lines. And another issue may be added to this is the cost of receiving ABA services in which funds are lacking or insurance does not completely cover. Moving forward, some strengths of TeleABA or telehealth are one, having access to ABA from anywhere with internet connection, which has created ease and provided services to those who lack access to high quality services in some rural areas where BCBAs and other professionals do not reside. TeleABA has provided real-time training, consultation, and delivery of services to those in rural areas and has increased services for those in need. This type of service delivery reduces barriers of location. Point two was the idea of skip the line and waiting list. The increasing number of children diagnosed with autism has increased, and the demand for professionals, as I stated before. The shortage of in rural areas is causing long wait lines and waiting lists for children to receive high-quality services. TeleABA is now available to more rural areas through advanced technology that may deliver the same treatment, avoiding long wait for the face-to-face services. This makes it much easier to access services without the time and expense of travel of clinicians as well. Amanda mentioned cutting time and travel of clinicians and ABA could be used towards treatment planning and more time with the client and much more. Point number three is another thing is that TeleABA is cost effective. TeleABA has shown to be less costly as it reduces transportation costs and direct treatment costs paid to staff for clinics. Families are not charged by time and sessions, making this more convenient for families who don't have the means to receive regular in-home therapy. In addition, Amanda mentioned that reimbursement for telehealth from Medicaid has been provided, and 21 states who have some form of reimbursement for telehealth via private coverage insurance has also been provided, making ABA services much more accessible for families. Lastly, freeing in-home and clinic space for those who need space for direct in-home was mentioned. As discussed, those who begin TeleABA services are removed from waiting lists and create room for those who have direct access to in-home therapy but are waiting to receive services. Additionally, TeleABA gives room for those individuals who have more severe, intense behaviors such as self-injurious behaviors and aggression that wouldn't be able to be managed through TeleABA. It was mentioned that it may be better for those who display these type of behaviors to be safe at home and receive services in their comfort zone. Now I'd like to focus on claims against TeleABA, starting with internet connection. Unfortunately, those who can benefit from TeleABA in rural areas may not have the best internet connection to access services, and there are some who do not have access to internet at all. Those who don't have internet may experience those who do not have the best internet may experience router trouble and unreliable technology, as Johnny mentioned. This can cause parental stress in which they cannot get the help that they need, and sometimes when a parent may need feedback, it may be delayed. In addition, some parents may feel that through TeleABA, they are being talked to rather than being an equal part of the team and actually contributing something to the treatment. They're being instructed more on what to do rather than contributing, as I just said. One other point against TeleABA is that there's also the possibility that TeleABA may not capture the full session. Some examples that Johnny gave was out of scene behaviors occurring or microphones having bad quality, therefore not being able to capture the whole entire picture, which would make it difficult for BCBAs to observe. Hopefully with the advances in technology though, more people will have access to high quality services through TeleABA. That being said, the positives of both approaches shows that both delivery types use evidence-based treatments for ASD that use ABA strategies, such as discrete child training, functional communication training, just to name a few. ABA focuses on skill acquisition through these strategies, and both have proven reduction in problem behavior. Both types of delivery of ABA can reach comparable behavioral outcomes. And regardless of delivery type, ABA has been proven to be effective in increasing communication, socialization skills, self-help skills, functional skills, and much more. Through ABA, individuals will have a personalized program which will address individual needs to help each individual reach their full potential regardless of treatment approach. This concludes the summary of our debate. Before concluding, would anyone else like to give their last thoughts?
Coming from like I would suggest also doing like a hybrid approach. So like how Oasis has, how we give the clients the kind of the option versus where they are kind of like also where they live. I would suggest that there needs to be more research regarding the hybrid approach of using both in-home and TeleABA together for the better outcome of the client.
And as you can see, obviously, there's still so much research being done on TeleABA. So if you guys are interested in it, I encourage all of you to get out there and just read about it because it's obviously growing. So.
Yeah, and then just to finally just echo what both of these guys have said, I think the hybrid use of both is really important. Again, ABA therapy, we work with individuals who have individual needs. So one type of therapy may work for one person, one type of therapy might work for another. So it's always good to do, like Amanda said, do the research and try to find out as much as you can about ABA and the different ways that they are, the different way that therapy sessions can be implemented.
All right, thanks for watching.